I should probably mention that bringing Alpha to an interstellar research station wasn't my best idea. But in my defense, nobody specifically said, "Don't bring a wolf." They said, "Bring an example of Earth wildlife for observation and educational purposes." And Alpha is definitely wildlife, definitely from Earth. And extremely educational, if you pay attention. The fact that every alien in the botanical synthesis garden was currently pressed against the bioluminescent plant walls, like they were trying to phase through them, wasn't my fault. Miscommunication happens. The garden was actually beautiful, I'll give them that. Multi-level terraces wrapped around the circular space, with living walls of plants that glowed soft teal and white, creating this dreamy, misty atmosphere with natural light filtering from somewhere above. Stone pathways wound between the levels, and the whole place smelled like rain and growing things. Very peaceful. Or it was peaceful, before I walked in with Alpha on a leash and caused what I can only describe as a dignified stampede. Alpha sat next to me, tongue out, tail wagging slowly, completely unbothered by the chaos. She's a good girl like that. Beautiful grey and white coat, intelligent amber eyes, the kind of wolf that looks like she stepped out of a nature documentary. Which technically she did, because I may have borrowed her from a wildlife sanctuary that owed me a favor. They said I could take her for a day. They didn't ask why. I didn't elaborate. Draxon stood about 15 feet away from us, which was the closest he'd gotten since I'd arrived. The massive Chimerian scientist looked like someone had taken a squid and a bodybuilder and made them have an intimidating baby. 8 feet of dark maroon armored skin, tentacle beard appendages hanging from his chin, piercing red eyes that currently glowed bright enough to use as emergency lighting, and a physique that suggested he could bench press a small spacecraft. He wore this full tactical outfit, black jacket with armored shoulders, burgundy cargo pants, the whole professional military scientist look. Right now, his facial tentacles were curled so tight they looked like stressed party streamers. That, Draxon said, his voice somehow deep and strangled at the same time, is a predator. Well, yeah, I said, giving Alpha a scratch behind the ears. She leaned into it, tail wagging harder. She's a grey wolf, Canis, lupus, apex predator of North American forests, though they used to have a much wider range before, you know, humans did their thing. Draxon's eyes somehow glowed brighter. Behind him, I could see other aliens peeking from behind the terraced levels. Various mammalian species, all researchers based on their clothing, all very studiously keeping large plants between themselves and us. One of them dropped something, didn't even try to pick it up, just retreated further up the terrace. "You brought an apex predator," Draxon said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child, to a research station. "You asked for Earth wildlife," I pointed out. Alpha yawned, showing all her teeth. Draxon flinched so hard his shoulder armor rattled. "She's extremely educational. Wolves are pack hunters, highly intelligent, complex social structures, a perfect specimen." "We expected something docile," Draxon said. His tentacles were starting to uncurl slightly, which I took as a good sign. "A prey species. Something that eats plants." "Oh, you wanted something boring," I said. "Why didn't you say so? I could have brought a rabbit. Though honestly, Alpha here is way more interesting. Plus, she's trained." "Trained?" Draxon repeated. "Yeah. Watch this." I unclipped Alpha's leash. Draxon made a sound like a dying accordion. "Alpha, sit." Alpha, who was already sitting, continued to sit. Her tail swept across the stone pathway. "She's already sitting," Draxon said tightly. "Exactly. Perfectly trained." I grinned. "Alpha, stay." Alpha stayed. Mostly because there was nothing more interesting to do, but Draxon didn't need to know that. She looked around the garden with mild interest, ears swiveling to catch sounds. Somewhere above us, an alien researcher knocked over a whole planter trying to climb higher. Draxon's skin was darkening, going from dark maroon to almost black in patches. I'd read that meant agitation in Chimerians, which seemed excessive. "Mr. Tyler," he said, and I noticed his three-fingered hands were clenching and unclenching. "That creature weighs approximately 100 pounds of pure muscle and teeth. It can smell fear. It is currently surrounded by dozens of beings who smell like fear." "Closer to 90 pounds, I corrected. "And yeah, she can smell fear. But that doesn't mean she's going to do anything about it. Look at her, she's just vibing." Alpha chose that moment to stand up and shake herself, a full body shake that started at her nose and rolled back to her tail. Her fur fluffed out, making her look even bigger. Draxon took 3 steps backward so fast he bumped into a decorative stone bench and nearly fell over it. His tentacles went rigid with alarm. "She's stretching," I said. "Dogs do that. Well, wolves do that. Canids in general, really." "Why is it looking at me?" Draxon whispered. Alpha was indeed looking at him, head slightly tilted, ears forward with interest. "You're the biggest thing in the room," I explained. "She's curious. Wolves are naturally curious about their environment. Tell it to stop being curious about me." "She's not an it, she's a she," I said. "And I can't just turn off her curiosity. That's not how brains work." Alpha took a step toward Draxon. He made that accordion sound again. She took another step, and I realized she was doing the thing where she investigates new people. Perfectly normal wolf behavior. Absolutely terrifying if you don't know that's what's happening. "It's approaching," Draxon said, his voice going up about an octave. "Tyler, your predator is approaching." "She just wants to sniff you," I said. "It's how wolves gather information. Scent is huge for them." "I do not want to be sniffed," Draxon said firmly. His eyes were glowing like red traffic lights. "I want it to return to your immediate vicinity." "Alpha, here, girl." I patted my leg. Alpha glanced at me, glanced back at Draxon, then decided I was more interesting and trotted back over. Her nails clicked on the stone pathway. Draxon looked like he'd just watched a bomb defuse itself at the last second. "This is completely unacceptable," Draxon said, but his tentacles were starting to relax slightly. "We cannot have an apex predator loose on a research station." "She's not loose, she's with me." I clipped the leash back on, which seemed to make Draxon feel marginally better. "And she's extremely well behaved. Haven't you noticed she hasn't tried to eat anyone? That is a very low bar for acceptable behavior. Look, you guys wanted to learn about Earth wildlife, right? Well, wolves are a huge part of Earth's ecosystem. Or they were. They're a keystone species. Their presence affects everything from vegetation to river patterns." Draxon blinked his massive red eyes. "How does a predator affect rivers?" "It's this whole cascade thing," I said, warming to the topic. This was actually fascinating stuff. Wolves hunt elk. Elk stop, overgrazing riverside vegetation. Vegetation stabilizes riverbanks. Rivers change course less. The whole ecosystem balances around them. "Your planet's rivers are controlled by predators," Draxon said slowly. "Well, influenced by, sort of. It's complicated." Alpha sat down again and started scratching her ear with her back leg, completely oblivious to the philosophical crisis she was causing. "The point is, wolves are important. You can't understand Earth ecology without understanding apex predators. We wanted to understand Earth ecology through something that wouldn't eat us," Draxon said. His tentacles did this weird ripple thing that might have been the Chimerian equivalent of a frustrated sigh. "Alpha's not going to eat you," I said. "You're way too big. She prefers prey in the deer size range." "That is not reassuring. Also, she's been fed. I gave her a whole chicken before we left." Draxon's eyes narrowed. "You fed it another Earth creature?" "Birds aren't sentient," I said. "I mean, some are smart, crows and parrots and stuff, but chickens are basically feathered potatoes. We farm them." "You farm creatures to feed to your predators," Draxon said, like he was taking mental notes for a horror documentary. "Well, also to feed to ourselves," I said. Humans eat chickens too. We're omnivores. There was a long pause. In the background, I heard something that might have been an alien researcher whimpering. The mist in the garden was getting thicker, or maybe that was just the mood. You're omnivores, Draxon repeated.
You are.
Yeah, we eat plants and animals both. It's pretty common on Earth, actually. Gives us a lot of dietary flexibility. You told me humans were the dominant species through intelligence and tool use. We are, I said, not sure where this was going. You did not mention you were also predators. I mean, we're not apex predators like wolves, I said. We're more like opportunistic omnivores who got really good at making tools. Though I guess technically, with modern weapons, we kind of are apex predators. We can take down pretty much anything if we want to. Draxon sat down on the stone bench, which creaked under his weight. His facial tentacles had gone completely limp. You brought an apex predator to demonstrate Earth wildlife, he said. And you yourself are also a predator. I really think you're focusing too much on the predator thing, I said. Alpha yawned again, lay down, and put her head on her paws. Look how calm she is. She's practically napping. It's conserving energy, Draxon said darkly. Predators do that between hunts. Or, she's just tired because I woke her up early and dragged her through 3 spatial gates to get here. I sat down on the pathway next to Alpha, who wagged her tail lazily without lifting her head. Seriously, you're getting worked up over nothing. Wolves are only dangerous if you're prey-sized and alone in their territory. We're in a garden on a space station. She's confused, if anything. Draxon watched us both with the intensity of someone trying to spot a trap. Above us, the alien researchers were starting to cautiously emerge from behind plants, though none of them came closer. The bioluminescent walls cast weird moving shadows that made Alpha's fur shimmer. Explain to me again why you thought this was appropriate, Draxon said, eventually. You sent a request for someone to bring Earth wildlife for study and observation, I said, ticking points off on my fingers. You said it should be representative of Earth's biodiversity. You said it should demonstrate unique Earth adaptations. Wolves check all those boxes. Plus, I figured you'd never get another chance to see one up close. There is a reason we would never get that chance, Draxon said. The reason is that it's dangerous. She's only dangerous to elk, I said. And I don't see any elk here, so we're good. Alpha chose that exact moment to lift her head and sniff the air, nose working. Then she looked directly at Draxon and licked her lips. It was just a normal dog-like gesture, cleaning her nose, but the timing was impeccable. Draxon's tentacles went rigid again. Why did it lick its mouth while looking at me? He said very quietly. She's just cleaning her face, I said, trying not to laugh. Wolves do that. It's grooming behavior. It looked like tasting the air behavior. Okay, she was probably smelling something interesting, but that doesn't mean she wants to eat you. Alpha lay her head back down, apparently satisfied with her air investigation. See? Completely harmless. I have been a researcher for 20 cycles, Draxon said, and I have never felt this much prey instinct in my life. My species evolved past this. We are predators ourselves. I looked at him, at his squid-like tentacle beard and red eyes and massive build. Wait, Chimerians are predators. Our ancestors were apex oceanic hunters, Draxon said, some pride creeping into his voice. We evolved intelligence while hunting pack prey in deep waters. So you're basically space squids who used to eat things, I said, delighted. That's amazing. You're like the ocean version of wolves. Draxon's expression did something complicated. I had not considered that comparison. Dude, this is perfect, I said, genuinely excited now. You can totally understand wolf behavior then. Pack dynamics, hunting strategies, social hierarchies. It's probably super similar to what your ancestors did. My ancestors, Draxon said slowly, did not domesticate their prey and bring them to research stations. Well, no, but humans didn't domesticate wolves either. I mean, we did eventually, that's where dogs came from. But Alpha here is full wolf, wild-born, sanctuary-raised. She's the real deal. You turned apex predators into companions, Draxon said. He was back to looking disturbed. You took creatures that hunt in packs and kill prey larger than themselves, and you made them live with you. It was more like a mutual benefit thing, I explained. Early humans and early wolves both hunted in packs, both were social species. We started working together, and eventually wolves domesticated themselves by hanging around human camps. The friendly ones got fed, bred more friendly wolves, and boom, dogs. Boom, Draxon repeated weakly. 10,000 years of selective evolution, I said. Now we have everything from wolves like Alpha to tiny dogs that fit in purses. Same species, technically. All Canis lupus. Draxon put his head in his large hands. His tentacles draped over his fingers like a weird beard curtain. Humans befriended apex predators and turned them into accessories. I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds weird, I admitted. Alpha's ear flicked. She was watching something move in the upper terraces, probably one of the researchers trying to sneak away. But it worked out pretty well. Dogs are great. Is that creature a dog or a wolf? Draxon said through his hands. You keep using both terms. She's a wolf, I said. Full wolf. I borrowed her from a wildlife sanctuary. Draxon's head snapped up. Borrowed. Yeah, they're cool with it. I've got her for the day. You have temporary custody of an apex predator, Draxon said. His eyes were doing the glowing thing again. What happens if you don't return it on time? Her, not it, and nothing happens. They'll just be annoyed with me. Alpha stretched out on her side, getting comfortable on the stone pathway. She's having a good time, look at her. Draxon looked. Alpha's tail was wagging slowly, thumping against the ground. Her eyes were half closed in contentment. She looked absolutely peaceful. It's lulling us into complacency, Draxon said. Or she's just a chill wolf enjoying a nice day, I suggested. Not everything is a hunting strategy. With predators, everything is a hunting strategy, Draxon said darkly, but he was watching Alpha with something that might have been curiosity now, under all the alarm. His tentacles were doing little thoughtful curls. What is that sound it's making? I listened. Alpha was making a low, rhythmic sound, almost like a hum. She's content, I said. That's like a happy sound. Wolves make all kinds of vocalizations. It's purring, Draxon said, sounding betrayed. The apex predator is purring. Well, not purring like a cat, but yeah, similar concept. She's happy. Draxon stood up slowly, and I realized he was actually considering coming closer. His tentacles were still doing the nervous curl thing, but his body language had shifted from terrified to extremely wary. Scientific curiosity warring with survival instinct, probably. If I approach, he said carefully, will it attack? She won't attack, I promised. She's used to people. The sanctuary has handlers who work with her daily. Human handlers, Draxon pointed out, who are also predators. We've been over this. Humans aren't really apex predators in the traditional sense. You literally just told me you can kill anything on your planet with your tools. Okay, fair point, I conceded. But we're friendly predators, mostly. Draxon took one step closer. Alpha's ear flicked toward him, but she didn't move otherwise. He took another step, then another. His massive frame was tense, ready to bolt, which would have been hilarious, given that he outweighed Alpha by at least 200 pounds and was twice her height. What do I do? He whispered, when he was about 10 feet away. Just let her see you, I said quietly. Move slow. Don't make sudden gestures. Let her get used to your presence. Draxon froze in place like a statue. Alpha raised her head, looked at him with mild interest, then put her head back down. Her tail thumped once against the stone. It acknowledged me. Draxon breathed. She acknowledged you, I corrected. And that tail thump was friendly. You're doing great. I am standing very still and trying not to die, Draxon said. I don't know if that qualifies as great. For first contact with a wolf, that's actually perfect technique, I assured him. Above us, the other researchers had started filming on their devices, apparently deciding documentation was worth the risk. "You're a natural." Alpha yawned, stretched, and then stood up in one fluid motion. Draxon made a sound like someone had jabbed him with electricity. She shook herself again, tags on her collar jingling, then started walking directly toward Draxon with purpose. "Tyler," Draxon said, his voice strangled. "Tyler, it's approaching again. She wants to greet you properly," I said, standing up. "Just stay calm." "Stay calm," Draxon repeated. "The predator is walking toward me, and you want me to stay calm." Alpha reached him and did exactly what I knew she'd do. She sniffed his boots, his legs, then sat down and looked up at him expectantly, tail wagging. Draxon stared down at her. She stared up at him. His tentacles had gone completely still. "What does it want?" he whispered. "Pet her," I said. "She wants attention." "You want me to touch the apex predator?" "Yes." There was a very long pause. Then, moving like he was defusing a bomb, Draxon slowly reached down with one large hand. Alpha watched his hand come closer, tail still wagging. His fingers made contact with the top of her head. Alpha's tail wagged harder. She leaned into the touch, making that content sound again. Draxon's facial tentacles curled in what I was learning to recognize as surprise. "It's soft," he said, wonder creeping into his voice. "The apex predator is soft." "Furs like that," I said, grinning. "She's a very good girl." Draxon very carefully scratched behind Alpha's ear. She tilted her head, giving him better access, and her back leg started thumping in approval. The massive alien scientist made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This is the strangest moment of my entire life," Draxon said. But he was smiling now, his tentacles doing relaxed wave patterns. "I'm petting an Earth apex predator, and it's enjoying it. Told you she was educational," I said. That's when Alpha decided she'd had enough standing, flopped onto her side, and rolled onto her back, exposing her belly and looking at Draxon with obvious expectation. Draxon's tentacles went rigid again. "Why is it displaying its vulnerable areas?" he demanded. "This is a trap. This is clearly a trap." "It's not a trap. She wants belly rubs," I said. "It's a trust thing. Wolves only show their stomachs when they feel safe." "The apex predator feels safe around me," Draxon said faintly. "Apparently you give good head scratches." Draxon, to his credit, actually bent down and carefully rubbed Alpha's belly. Her tail went wild, back legs kicking in the air with happiness. Several researchers in the terraces above made sounds of shock. "This is impossible," Draxon said, but he was still petting her. "This creature should be terrifying. It should be dangerous. Why is it acting like a—" Alpha's ears suddenly perked up. She rolled to her feet in one motion, alert and focused. Her whole body had gone tense, nose working overtime. Draxon scrambled backwards so fast he crashed into the stone bench again. "What's happening?" he said urgently. "What's wrong with it?" "She heard something," I said, trying to figure out what had caught her attention. Alpha's hackles were slightly raised, her tail straight out behind her. She was staring at the upper terrace, a low rumble starting in her chest. "Is that growling?" Draxon said. His skin had darkened to nearly black. "Tyler, that's growling. Something's bothering her," I said, concerned now. I followed her gaze and saw movement in the shadows of the upper level. "Hey, is anyone else supposed to be up there?" "Only researchers," Draxon said. "Why? What does it sense?" Before I could answer, Alpha's rumble turned into a full bark, sharp and loud in the enclosed garden. She lunged forward, hitting the end of her leash, still barking. Every alien in the garden screamed, and that's when the upper terrace collapsed. The terrace didn't just collapse, it exploded downward in a shower of stone and bioluminescent plants, and one very surprised alien researcher, who definitely should not have been leaning on that railing. Alpha was barking her head off, dancing at the end of her leash, and Draxon had pressed himself so flat against the wall he was practically becoming part of it. "She knew," I said, amazed, pulling Alpha back from the debris field. She heard the structural weakness before it gave way. Draxon peeled himself off the wall, tentacles wild with alarm. The Predator saved us. Well, saved you mostly, I said. I was over here. The researcher who'd fallen was groaning in a pile of dirt and glowing plants, looking shaken but okay. Alpha had stopped barking and was now wagging her tail like she'd done something clever, which technically she had. This makes no sense, Draxon said. But he was looking at Alpha differently now. Less prey instinct, more scientific fascination. Why would it warn us? Pack behavior, I explained, checking Alpha over to make sure she hadn't been hit by debris. Wolves protect their pack. Apparently she decided we're pack now. We're pack, Draxon repeated slowly. His tentacles did that thoughtful curl again. The apex predator adopted us into her social structure. Basically, yeah. Alpha sat down, looking very pleased with herself. Good girl, Alpha. Very good girl. Draxon approached again, slower this time but without the existential terror. He reached down and carefully scratched Alpha's head. She leaned into it, tail thumping. This is extraordinary, he said quietly. We have documented nothing like this, a predator species that forms cooperative bonds outside its own kind. Humans and wolves have been doing it for thousands of years, I said. It's kind of our thing. Your thing is befriending creatures that could kill you, Draxon said, but he was smiling, his red eyes warm instead of alarmed. Humans are absolutely insane. Yeah, probably, I admitted. But it works out pretty well most of the time. The other researchers were cautiously approaching now, curious, overcoming caution. Alpha watched them come closer, calm and alert, but not aggressive. Draxon stood next to me, one hand still resting on Alpha's head, his massive frame relaxed. So, I said, grinning, still think I should have brought a rabbit? Draxon's tentacles rippled in what I was pretty sure was laughter. Absolutely not, he said. This is far more educational. He looked down at Alpha, who looked back up at him with those intelligent amber eyes. Though perhaps next time, warn us that your wildlife includes emergency response capabilities. Where's the fun in that? I said. Alpha yawned, showing all her teeth again, but this time Draxon didn't flinch. He just scratched behind her ears while she leaned against his leg. This massive alien scientist and a grey wolf, standing together in a garden full of glowing plants and confused researchers. We're going to need you to come back, Draxon said suddenly. With more examples, we have so many questions. About wolves specifically or Earth predators in general, I asked. Yes, Draxon said emphatically. His tentacles were doing excited curls now. All of it. If this is what you consider appropriate to bring to a first meeting, I cannot imagine what else your planet has produced. I thought about grizzly bears, honey badgers, and house cats. Oh man, I said, you have no idea. Alpha wagged her tail in agreement, because apparently she understood dramatic timing. Draxon looked between us. His expression caught somewhere between scientific excitement and healthy survival instinct, and I realized this was going to be the start of a beautiful and probably chaotic research partnership. They wanted to study Earth wildlife, and I brought the Alpha. Mission accomplished.